Now, in Nigeria, like many other countries, businesses have been badly hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, even as shortages and a global supply chain bottleneck are posing fresh problems.
Very well said, Adesua. As the current lockdown across most parts of the world persists, about 2.23 trillion, that's a colossal amount, worth of trade from Nigeria's top 5 import countries will likely be lost. This could ultimately lead to domestic scarcity. According to the report, 4 of Nigeria's top trading partners and import sources, that's China, USA, Spain, and the Netherlands, are currently implementing lockdown measures, and these countries account for 45% of Nigeria's imports.
Huge numbers there, but more so for the first time in 25 years, the coronavirus outbreak is expected to push Sub-Saharan Africa into recession by 2020.
Now, in a forecast, the World Bank says the region's economy will contract between 2.1% and 5.1% from growth of 2.4% last year, and that the coronavirus will cost Sub-Saharan Africa between $37 billion and $79 billion in output losses. This, the bank says, is due to trade and value chain disruption, among other factors.
And it should be said that the coronavirus has led to suspension of international passenger travel in many countries on the continent, hit the sectors such as tourism. The World Bank and International Monetary Fund, IMF, are racing to provide emergency funds for African countries and others to mitigate this impact.
Well, joining us now to discuss Nigeria's economic imbalances due to COVID-19 is Yomi Olugbenro, a tax leader at Deloitte. Welcome to the morning show, Mr. Olugbenro. Now, let's start with this. How bad is the economic impact of this on Nigeria? We're looking at a country whose economy is heavily oil dependent, and 70% of our national budget is based off of our revenues. Looking at what COVID-19 has done to crude oil prices, can you give us a sense of how bad this effect is going to be, especially as experts have come out to say we might be seeing it in 2020?
Well, good to be on your show. We are in very difficult period. These are unprecedented moment in the life of any economy. Even the large-sized economy with large fiscal buffer, that are well advanced, the impact is of a scale and magnitude that we haven't seen, in the recent past. So you can only begin to imagine how fundamental and how deep-cutting this will be for smaller economies, with the size of our fiscal buffer, with the state of our infrastructure, and all of that. So, but what we're seeing at the moment is essentially just trying to contain, the medical emergency. So when the medical emergency is over and countries reopen and businesses reopen, I think the scale and the depth of the challenge will then become a lot clearer to us. But we can hazard a good guess that the economy is going to be facing tough challenges, and this won't just be limited to Nigeria. But we know that the impact on an economy like Nigeria, with the combined impact of the disruption that the COVID-19 caused, and then on the other hand, what is happening to the international oil market. It's tough for the economy, and we need to brace up for tough times ahead.
So, Yomi, it might just be that you're trying to say, okay, let's deal with the medical emergency first. But the economic realities that started staring us in the face. Only 2 days ago, something unprecedented happened. In fact, in our lifetime, maybe in the lifetime of our children, oil went below 37, just negative $37 per barrel. That's West Texas Intermediate. They had to pay the buyers to just take the oil away from them because there was no storage for it. There's a big glut. Saudi Arabia, Russia has been going neck and neck all this while. Our Bonny Light is not doing well. Our avocados, not doing well. Our escravos, not doing well. Our agbame, not doing well. Nigeria is a largely monoproduct economy. What does this portend for us?
This is tough, and my comment earlier about dealing with the medical emergency is not in any way to suggest that we can fold our arms and just imagine that this is just a health crisis. and we need to deal with the health crisis first. Not at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that we've been badly hit by the combined force of a medical crisis of a scale that we haven't seen, but also an economic and a disruption to the business at a scale and magnitude that has never been imagined in our recent past. So we're in a crisis moment. So the comments around making sure that we arrest the medical situation and at least have a guarantee of continuity of life is just in terms of evaluating priorities and which one should take a greater percentage of our attention. But just exactly at the same time, right now, we need to be bracing up for how we're going to rescue this economy back from a near collapse that this is likely going to cost us. So we have this collapse of crude oil prices, where we get virtually about 90% of our foreign exchange earning, and almost the same in terms of a significant portion in terms of our national income. Now, when that happens, the typical focus would be for us to then see what we can do back end from the non-oil sources to see how much revenue we can make so that the country can continue. But how much can we, probably make when the economy itself has been badly hit by the impact of coronavirus? So all of the sectors, the number of sectors that are virtually on their knees, aviation, tourism, those are, basically on their knees. So even some of the sectors that, many of us are saying are going to, triumph and come out well, like technology, like telecom, like e-commerce, they're not, it's just at the scale of impact, maybe a lot less. So they're also going to be dealing with a whole lot of other things. So if they need to replace infrastructure, and all of that at a time where foreign exchange will be scarce, and all of it. So you can imagine the combined impact of that. So what I think we need to be doing now is to roll up our sleeves and trying to make sure that both the Economic Sustainability Committee, that the federal government has set up, and what the Special Economic Advisory Team, is doing, and all of the agencies, of government that are, that work in tandem with all of these, we need to all come together at this material time to see how we're going to draw up, an economic recovery, kind of a plan. And this needs to be bullish. This needs to be, we need to see the magnitude and the scale of this challenge so that the intensity of our action, the urgency of response, can be at the volume, that is required to arrest this economy. And we need to do that while also imagining some far-reaching measures that the country will need to take. These are no easy times at all, and a number of economists are projecting different kind of scenario, whether it's going to be a global depression, whether it's going to be a slow recovery, whether it's going to be a fast recovery, what is going to happen over the next 12 months to 18 months. So tough measures needed to be taken at this particular time. So what are we going to do to keep the government running when sources of income are zeroing up? Oil sources, non-oil sources. Where are we going to get the funding? What are we going to consider as our priority that will demand the attention of the limited resource and the limited funds that we're going to have? How are we going to help businesses that are going to probably go into extinction or collapse? How are we going to help them come back to life? How are we going to help prevent job losses? Or how are we going to help businesses, keep their employees? So what are we going to do when the social crisis become almost unmanageable? So a lot of scenarios plotting needs to be going on now, and we need to go into it with the mindset that these are measures that are needed to arrest crisis of the scale and magnitude that, that is staring us in the face.
All right, Mr. Olugbenro, you did raise a lot of pertinent questions there, demanding answers. But I would like to bring it down to the state levels, because a lot of people have focused on the federal government's response. We've seen some sort of coordinated response from the fiscal and the monetary side, including revising the 2020 budget benchmarks. Some say that might have to be revised again. But what exactly does this portend for the federating states at the moment? And we do know that, yes, Forex is not in high demand, neither is it in high supply at the moment. But how long do you think that the Central Bank of Nigeria can hold out on adjustment of the currency downwards? And is it inevitable at this time?
I mean, if it's tough for the central government, for the federal government, you can only imagine how tougher it will be for the federating states. Many of the states of the federation get the bulk of their funding and the bulk of their financing from FAC, from the federation account. And we've seen, even as of January and February, how the federal account allocation distribution to the state have fallen drastically. And there are projections that this trend will continue, even fall significantly lower. When the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning was rolling out the fiscal stimulus measure, she did mention that there is a plan to withdraw, $150 million US, that's from our sovereign investment fund. So that we can use to augment, distribution to states in June. There are already lines and facilities that have been discussed with the CBN, such that whenever distribution falls below, certain threshold, we can draw on that to augment what states are going to have. But that's just going to be augmentation. That's never going to take us to what ideally, it should be. Internally generated revenue for many states is significantly lower than it should be. And unfortunately, they can't even do so much in terms of raising taxes, and getting all of that, because the taxpayers, corporate and individual, that they're probably going to turn to are already having their businesses, badly beaten and looking for bailout and looking for stimulus and looking for subvention, from government so that they can keep afloat. So it's a lot of tough it's a lot of tough times ahead, and for me, I think this is perhaps the best time for us to start rethinking what structural changes we can make. Maybe not so much in the immediate, because there's so much, there's just so little you can do in the immediate without aggravating the issue. But there's a whole lot of questions that we need to bring back to the table. Whether there's a way we can reduce the size of, our public service, for example. Is it a time that we can reconsider whether our National Assembly should still be bicameral, on a full-time basis? Is it a time that we need to probably rethink, what the what do you call this rule that requires minimum representation at each state, at the center, that mandates the executive, for example, to have a particular size of cabinet. So there's a whole lot of conversations that we need to bring to the table, and we must realize that these tough measures need to be taken now. These are not easy times, and it will require more than administrative palliative. It will require fundamental structural changes so that we can realize that this economy is just so susceptible and so vulnerable to a lot of shocks. We don't have the required shock absorber for our size of economy.
All right, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro, stay with us. We'll go on a break. When we return, you respond to my question on the currency adjustment debate at a time like this. We'll be right back. Welcome Welcome back. You're still watching the Morning Show here on the Rise News, and we have Yomi Olugbenro, a tax leader at Deloitte. Thank you so much for staying with us. We're looking at Nigeria's economic prospects and imbalances due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And Mr. Olugbenro, I was asking before that break, is it a time to look at the currency adjustments downwards? Should the CBN be doing this, and is it inevitable? Because some argue that that would create some liquidity for the federating states who are struggling, really.
Well, just like any other policy that the monetary authorities need to think away, you know that there are a lot of variables and a lot of considerations. For starters, in the understanding that the foreign exchange is now being largely governed, I mean the rate, the exchange rate, is now being governed largely by the price movements, is market reflective because of the I and E window. Then we can hazard a good guess that with a shortage in supply and with the kind of crisis that is ahead of us, the exchange rate will at some point in time have to respond, to what the market conditions and what the market realities are. So it's a good guess to imagine that the shortage in supply and the potential crisis that we will be getting into will of a necessity, be reflective, in the exchange rate, in the autonomous market, in the IIM window. What we can tell is the fact that the government also have a lot of consideration when it comes to some of the moderation that is done, behind the scene. But personally, my view is that we haven't got the size of reserve. We haven't got a reserve size, and also we haven't got the fiscal buffer that will allow us to continue to artificially hold down rates. If we do that, the impact on the economy will be a lot more. So a common sense, beyond complicated economics, will suggest that when your FX earning is low, and you need a lot of naira to continue to defray your local obligations, an increase in the rate will give you a slightly higher volume of naira, to work with. That would be my expectation. That would be common sense expectation. But again, it's up to the monetary authorities to look at the variables, to look at the factors, to look at the circumstances, to look at the size of our reserve, and see whether that extent of a market reflection, can be allowed to happen, or whether it will be moderated, whether it will be moderated in the manner that's been done in the past. Okay,
Yomi, I've got a quick insight, and I just want you to react to this. Two things I'd like to talk about. The very first one, the MBS figures came out. The MBS figures came out recently. 12.26, 0.6 increase. What caused it? Food prices. Let's not forget that we had shut our borders earlier, and coronavirus, COVID-19 has greatly decimated the food logistical chain in this country. So we can't move food around. So there's food inflation going on. What can we do about it? And secondly, Yomi, I think Mother Nature was fair and kind to us. About 6-7 years ago, gave us high crude oil price. The world was buying crude oil for $150 per barrel. Correct me if I'm wrong. And we had a sovereign wealth account to store the money in. Where is that money? Can we call that money now?
Okay, I think I get the first part of the question. The second part isn't so clear, but I think the second part is talking about the food inflation and what are we going to do to arrest, the hike in prices of goods and all of that. So, you and I know that the prices of any commodity is determined by the forces of demand and supply. So when supply is cut or supply is reduced, and you have a lot of people trying to scamper around for, the limited availability, there's only one direction of travel for the prices of that commodity. So to deal with that, what we will need to do is to make sure that we cover the supply side of the food chain. So how are we going to, in the immediate to short to medium, focus significantly on agriculture and on food, on basic food items, and ensuring that they are made available in the quantum and the quantity, that will meet the demand side of the equation. So that's what we need to do. I think there's a lot of things going on well from the agri sector. We need to intensify this. I think some of the immediate constraints is impacted by the lockdown, by the fact that people can't work. So the few who manage to move around, the people who are able to deal with the logistic challenges that is prevalent at this particular time, are then up to serve quite a large share. And you also know that when a lot of people are back home, the school children are home, their parents are home, no one can go anywhere. The demand and the volume of goods that is of food that is consumed, will be a lot higher. So what we will need to do to make sure that we deal with that, essentially, would be to cover the shortfall and the gap that we have on the supply side of things. So that's on the food side. So your other question.
The second question was many years ago, we had crude oil prices at $150 per barrel. It was the good old days for us many years ago. I thought we put some money aside. Where is the money? Can't we call on that money now?
Well, show me the money. Where is the money? Well, I think we all need to be asking. We all need to be asking questions. But if the statistics are right, with foreign exchange reserve and all of the information that has been in the media over the last 4, 5, 8 years, including prior administration and current administration, I don't think there's so much that is stocked up anywhere. I guess just on the lighter side, the only one I've been expecting is that almost every year and almost every 6 months, there's this news rediscovery about Abacha loot, and some releases from Switzerland and all of that. I think we have one former president that seems to have perfected the act of just coming to bail us out after every 1 year. So I'm hoping that very soon there will be another release or discovery of some money stashed somewhere. So maybe that will help us.
Okay,
Mr. That's what we need.
Yes, Mr. Olugbenro, let's talk about us being able to take advantage of the fourth industrial revolution. I mean, even despite the COVID-19 disrupting the economy, there are certain sectors that have been able to prevail. For example, the telecommunications company sector, rather. We are seeing that even Netflix now represents more than even ExxonMobil with a whopping $169 billion as we speak. Now, my question to you is, how can we begin to take advantage of other sectors that are not oil dependent? We have spoken about diversifying the economy for a long time, but now that we are faced with it, how do we begin to take advantage of it?
Fantastic question, and you've raised a point that is very dear to my heart. I think one of the positives, of the crisis of coronavirus that we're dealing with is a mass discovery by everybody all around the world that we can have an early start of digitization. We can have an early start of a launch into the fourth industrial revolution. Virtually every business that has been able to do any meaningful thing over the past 4 weeks anywhere in the world have been businesses that have leveraged technology, that have leveraged, communication infrastructure. So that alone should tell us how much power that is inherent in this particular sector. If there are 1 or 2 sectors that are going to come up smiling at the end of this crisis, it will be telecommunication and technology businesses that are into e-commerce. And so we need to move our attention to how we can digitize the economy. So there's a lot of shift away from brick and mortar style of doing anything, whether it's education or whether it's medicine, whether it's consulting, whether it's agriculture, whether it's manufacturing, whatever it is that you are doing at the moment, whatever sector you belong, your capacity to survive at this time will be determined largely by the extent of infusion of technology that you have. And that should be a wake-up call to us as a nation. So it's a knowledge economy. Oil companies, share prices and oil companies' market capitalization are now coming second, third, fourth, fifth place to telecom and technology and e-commerce type of businesses. That's what we need to do. And that's one area that we can leverage the potential and the capacity and the talent of the vast majority of Nigerian youth. So we need to think of digitizing every sector. So when we talk about dealing with any of our challenges, revenue generation, growing non-oil sector, dealing with the unemployment crisis, making sure that the agricultural sector is expanded, whatever is the sector, the first person that should be made to speak is whoever is leading the digitization of that initiative. That's where a lot of benefit can be realized. And I can tell you for a fact that there is no business that is going to return to what it used to be pre-COVID. COVID has come to make a fundamental and permanent change in the way we are doing things. We're having this interview, using technology and using calling. On a good day, I will have to walk into your studio to have this conversation. So a lot of people just suddenly realize that you don't need to travel from Ikorodu to Victoria Island just because you want to have a 30 minutes meeting. So how can we leverage this? And the extent to which we answer that positively, the extent to which we leverage that will determine how the economy will survive over the next 5 to 10 years.
Mr. Olugbenro, in about 50 seconds, if you can, you touched on unemployment. I wonder what your projections are. We know the last figures we saw were in third quarter 2018, but with COVID-19, what are your projections?
Well, I haven't got a specific projection in terms of what the rate would be, what the number would be. I will leave that honors to the Bureau of Statistics, to the Statistician General. But let's talk, common sense economics. All right. So you can imagine that prior to COVID we have a challenge. Statistics relating to unemployment has just been released. So when you compound the impact of the job losses and business shutdown and the slowdown in the economy and business activity that this virus has brought our way, we can only imagine that there is no reduction in view as far as the unemployment rate is concerned. How high it will go will be determined by how quickly we respond and the extent of it.
All right. Thank you so much, Yomi Olugbenro, for being here and talking to us about this. We just hope everything is well and everything is done to cushion this effect and drive down the unemployment numbers.